You mean I get nothing? Not even the house I raised him in?" My voice trembled through the lawyer's office, sharp and raw, cutting through the air like glass. The mahogany desk between us felt like a canyon. 27 years of memories flashed before my eyes, teaching my boy to ride his bike in that very driveway, nursing him through chicken pox in that upstairs bedroom, celebrating his college graduation in that living room. My daughter-in-law smirked. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. "That's right, Linda," she hissed, her arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her designer purse. "Nothing. He left it all to me, the house, the savings, every last cent. You're just the mother-in-law, and you don't belong here anymore." Her mother chuckled beside her, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. "Pathetic, isn't it? An old woman clinging for scraps. At her age, she should know better." The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, who had known our family for 15 years, shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. His eyes darted between us, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. I slammed my palm on the table. The sound echoed through the office like a gunshot. "I am his mother. I raised him in that house. I worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving lunch at the diner during the day. I bled for that boy. I sacrificed everything. You can't erase me." She leaned in close, her expensive perfume stinging my nose, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than any shout. Her words dripped like venom. "Erase you? Oh no, Linda. You'll erase yourself when the world sees you for what you really are. Useless, empty, nothing. A bitter old woman who can't let go." Gasps from the assistants in the office. The lawyer's hand trembled as he shuffled papers, avoiding my eyes. The secretary by the door covered her mouth in shock. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking not from weakness, but from pure rage coursing through my veins. "We'll see about that," I whispered, my voice barely audible but carrying the weight of a promise. I walked out, face burning, tears streaming, as she strutted past with her chin high, her heels clicking triumphantly against the marble floor. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "Not yet. Not yet." She doesn't know what's coming. It didn't stop at the office. She made sure the whole world saw me as nothing. The very next day, she started her campaign of destruction. At Franklin's son's funeral home, where we had planned my son's service together just days before, she had changed everything. I walked in, expecting to finalize the arrangements we had discussed. The director, Mrs. Franklin, a kind woman I'd known since she was a little girl, looked at me with confusion and pity. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams," she said softly, "but your daughter-in-law came in this morning. She said she's handling everything now. She removed you from all the arrangements." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, removed me?" "She said you're no longer family, that you have no say in the funeral arrangements. She changed the flowers, the music, even the pastor. She specifically requested that you not be involved in any decisions." I gripped the edge of her desk. "That's my son in there, my baby boy." Mrs. Franklin's eyes filled with tears. "I know, honey, I know. But legally, as his wife..." The room spun around me. 24 hours ago, I was planning my son's funeral. Now I was being told I had no right to even participate. At the church, St. Matthew's, where I had taken my son every Sunday for 18 years, I tried to sit in the front pew. The church was packed. Neighbors, co-workers, old school friends, people I had known for decades, people who had watched my boy grow up. I approached the front row, where I had sat with my son every Sunday for nearly 2 decades, where he had been baptized, confirmed, where he had served as an altar boy. She blocked me with a cold smile, standing up and spreading her arms across the pew like a human barrier. "This row is for immediate family," she said loudly, making sure everyone in the packed church could hear. Her voice carried to the back pews, causing heads to turn and whispers to ripple through the congregation. Tears burned my eyes. I am family. I'm his mother. Not anymore, she spat, her voice echoing off the church walls. You're just an ex-mother-in-law now. Back of the church is more appropriate for your status. Gasps from the mourners. Mrs. Henderson from next door covered her mouth. Old Mr. Jameson shook his head in disbelief. I stumbled to the back, past faces I had known for years, past people who had eaten dinner at my table, past neighbors who had borrowed sugar and shared gossip over the fence. Some looked at me with pity. Others looked away entirely, too embarrassed to meet my eyes. During the service, as Pastor Williams spoke about my son's kindness and generosity, traits I had instilled in him through years of love and sacrifice, she sobbed dramatically in the front row, accepting condolences like a grieving widow. I sat in the back, invisible, erased from my own son's funeral. 3 days later, at the cemetery, I thought I could at least say goodbye in private. I knelt beside the fresh grave, the earth still dark and soft. I placed white lilies, his favorite flowers, against the marble headstone. I'll always be here, my boy, I whispered, my fingers tracing his name carved into the stone. No matter what she does, I'll always be your mother. Always. The morning was quiet, peaceful. For a moment I felt close to him again. Then I heard the sharp click of heels on the gravel path. She marched up with 2 of her friends, their faces set in matching expressions of disdain. Without a word, she snatched my flowers and tossed them aside like garbage. The white petals scattered across the dark earth. You've had your turn, Linda. This is my husband's grave now. I don't want your cheap flowers here. She pulled out an enormous spray of expensive roses, flashy, red, ostentatious. These are appropriate flowers. From his real family. Gasps from other visitors at nearby graves. An elderly man walking his dog stopped and stared. A young mother visiting her father's grave pulled her children closer, whispering. My body shook with rage, but I forced myself to stand with dignity. I won't let you steal my son's memory, I said quietly. She laughed, throwing her head back. Steal it? Honey, I own it. Just like I own everything else that was his. 2 weeks later, I came home to find moving trucks in my driveway. 3 burly men were carrying boxes from my house, the house where I had raised my son, where I had lived for 27 years, where every room held a lifetime of memories. She leaned in the doorway, arms folded, wearing a smug smile and a new diamond bracelet I didn't recognize. This house? Mine now. You? Out. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watering her garden. She stopped and stared. Linda? She called out, confused. What's happening? My daughter-in-law raised her voice, making sure everyone in the cul-de-sac could hear. Poor Linda here thought she could stay in my house forever. She's been living here rent-free, like a guest who overstayed her welcome. Time for her to face reality. More neighbors emerged from their houses. Mr. and Mrs. Chen from across the street. The Johnson family from next door. Even teenage Katie from the corner house, who was supposed to be in school. The movers dumped my belongings on the curb like trash. My clothes, my books, my photo albums. A box burst open, and my underwear spilled into the dirt. Mrs. Patterson gasped, "That's not right!" But she didn't intervene. None of them did. They just watched, whispering among themselves. "Shameful," I heard someone mutter. "At her age," said another voice. "Maybe she should have planned better." My chest burned with humiliation. These were people I had known for decades. People whose children I had babysat, whose lawns I had mowed when they were sick, whose casseroles I had delivered when they were grieving. Now they watched me like a spectacle. I gathered what dignity I could and picked up a single photo album that had fallen open in the dirt. Pictures of my son's childhood scattered across the concrete. "Take a good look," I said to the gathering crowd, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. "Remember this moment. Remember what you witnessed here today." But she wasn't finished destroying me. Not by a long shot. At the monthly neighborhood potluck, a tradition I had helped start 15 years ago, she made her grand entrance fashionably late, wearing a new dress and jewelry that must have cost more than I made in 3 months at the diner. I sat at a small table in the corner with my store-bought pie, feeling like an unwelcome stranger in a community I had helped build. She chose the center table, surrounded by the neighborhood social leaders, the HOA president, the garden club chairwoman, the couple who organized the annual block party. Halfway through dinner, she stood up, tapping her wine glass with a silver spoon. "I have an announcement," she called out, her voice carrying across the community center. "I want to thank everyone for their support during this difficult time. My husband, God rest his soul, left me very well provided for. He left me everything: the house, the investments, the savings." Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. "Some people," she continued, her eyes finding mine across the room, "have had trouble accepting the new reality. Some people thought they were entitled to what wasn't theirs. But my husband made his choice clear. He knew who deserved his legacy." She raised her glass higher. "To moving forward, to leaving the past behind, and to old women learning when it's time to step aside gracefully." The table erupted in laughter and applause. Other tables joined in. Even Mrs. Patterson, my supposed friend, was clapping. I sat frozen, my face burning, my hands clenched in my lap. "Poor thing," I heard someone whisper. "She really thought she'd inherit something. At her age, she should have saved more. Maybe this will teach her some independence." Each word was a dagger, each chuckle carved deeper into my soul. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and tell them all the truth about what she really was. But I forced myself to remain seated, to smile, to nod when people offered their pitying looks. Not yet. Not yet. Even at my church, where I had volunteered for 15 years, she made sure to poison the well. During the weekly ladies' circle, where we planned charity events and community outreach, she arrived as a guest of Mrs. Henderson. The topic that day was the upcoming holiday food drive, something I had organized for the past 8 years. "I'd love to help," she announced sweetly. "I have so much now that my husband has passed. He left me very comfortable. In fact, I was thinking of making a substantial donation to the church." Eyes lit up around the circle. "A substantial donation could fund the food drive for the entire year." "That's wonderful, dear," said Mrs. Baker, the circle leader. "Yes, well, I believe in giving back, unlike some people who just take and take." Her eyes found mine. "Some people who think the world owes them something just because they're old and alone." Uncomfortable silence. "I mean, I understand desperation," she continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "When you have nothing, when your own child doesn't think enough of you to leave you provided for, well, I suppose you might get desperate. You might even beg." Mrs. Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sure Linda is doing just fine." "Oh, I'm sure she's managing," she replied with a sweet smile. "Though I heard she's working double shifts at that little diner downtown. At her age, it's really quite sad." The circle of women looked at me with pity. These were women I had served alongside for years, women whose fundraisers I had organized, whose bake sales I had contributed to, whose prayer requests I had faithfully remembered. Now they looked at me like a charity case. "If you ever need help, Linda," said Mrs. Watson gently, "the church has assistance programs." I wanted to sink through the floor. "I'm fine," I managed to say, my voice barely audible. "Of course you are, dear," she said, reaching over to pat my hand condescendingly. "We all make do with what we have." That night, in my rented room above the diner, a cramped space with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that clanged all night, I reached my breaking point. The room smelled of grease and desperation. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling. The window looked out onto an alley filled with dumpsters. This was my life now, This was what I had been reduced to. I sat on the thin mattress, holding my son's photo, the only picture I had managed to save from the house. "My boy," I whispered, choking on sobs that came from the deepest part of my soul. They stripped me of everything, my dignity, my home, my place at your side. They turned our friends against me. They made me a joke, a cautionary tale about pathetic old women who don't know their place. My hands trembled as I reached into my bag, the same bag I had carried to that terrible lawyers' meeting weeks ago. Hidden in the inside pocket, forgotten in all the chaos and humiliation, was a sealed envelope the lawyer had discreetly slipped to me as I was leaving, when she was busy gloating to her mother in the hallway. I had been too devastated to open it that day, too overwhelmed by grief and shock to process what it might contain. Now, with nothing left to lose, I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside, in my son's familiar handwriting, the same careful script he had used since elementary school, was a letter. "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably going through hell right now. I know her, Mom. I know exactly what she is and what she'll do when I'm not here to stop her. I've watched her true nature emerge over these past few years. The way she talks about you when she thinks I'm not listening. The way she rolls her eyes when you call. The way she's already planning for this day. I've seen her real face, and it terrifies me. That's why I made arrangements she doesn't know about. That's why I made sure you will never be left with nothing. Enclosed are the deeds to the house on Maple Street. Remember the little blue cottage we looked at together last year when you mentioned wanting to downsize someday? I bought it 6 months ago. It's yours, free and clear. Also enclosed is documentation for the account containing $500,000 in your name. It's been there for 2 years, growing, waiting. I couldn't tell you while I was alive because I didn't want you to worry about why I was making these preparations. I didn't want you to know how bad things had gotten between us, how much I had come to see her true nature. But I needed to protect you. I needed to make sure that no matter what happened, no matter what she tried to do, you would be safe. She's going to try to destroy you, Mom. She's going to try to humiliate you and break your spirit. She's going to want the whole world to see you as nothing. Let her. Let her reveal who she really is to everyone. Let her show her true colors. Let her dig her own grave with her cruelty and greed. And when she's done, when she's shown the whole world what kind of person she really is, that's when you rise. Rise like the strong woman who raised me. Rise like the fighter who worked 2 jobs to put me through college. Rise like the mother who never gave up, never gave in, never let the world defeat her. Live free, Mom. Live strong. Live well. And make sure everyone knows that Linda Grace Williams is not a woman who stays down. All my love, always and forever, your son, Michael." Tears splashed on the letter, but for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of despair. My sobs turned into laughter, low, bitter, sharp, and filled with something I had almost forgotten I possessed. Power. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered to his photo, my lips curling into a smile that felt like coming back to life. "You knew. You saw right through her. You knew her greed, her cruelty, her evil heart. And you gave me the weapon to destroy her." I stood up slowly, my back straightening, my chin lifting. I walked to the cracked mirror on the dresser and looked at myself. Really looked, for the first time since the funeral. I saw a woman who had been beaten down, humiliated, stripped of everything. But I also saw something else. I saw Linda Grace Williams, the woman who had raised a son good enough to see the future and protect his mother. The woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her for 63 years. My voice hardened as I spoke to my reflection. They think I'm finished. They think they've broken me. They think Linda Grace Williams is down for the count. I smiled, and it was not a kind smile. But Linda Grace Williams does not break. She bends, she learns, she plans. And then she rises. And when I rise, they will choke on every cruel word they ever spoke about me. I didn't rush. I had learned patience over 6 decades of life, and I was going to need every bit of it. For the next month, I stayed quiet. I played the part they expected me to play, the broken, defeated old woman. I kept working double shifts at the diner, letting people see me there, letting them whisper about how far I had fallen. I attended church and sat in the back, letting them see me alone and apparently friendless. I went to the grocery store and used coupons carefully, letting them think I was counting every penny. Meanwhile, she grew more arrogant by the day. She threw bigger parties in what she thought was her house. I would drive past sometimes and see the cars lined up, hear the laughter and music spilling out into the night. She bought new clothes, new jewelry, a new car, a bright red convertible that she parked prominently in the driveway for everyone to admire. "Linda's probably taking the bus now," I heard her tell someone at the gas station. "I saw her counting change at the grocery store yesterday. She probably eats nothing but beans and rice. Maybe she should apply for food stamps. Or better yet, maybe she should beg outside the church on Sundays." Her friends laughed. Even the gas station attendant chuckled. At the country club, where she had gotten my son to buy a membership he couldn't really afford, she held court like a queen. "God has been so good to me," she announced to anyone who would listen. "He took my husband, but he left me everything I need to live comfortably." Unlike some people who have to start over at this age. Can you imagine? Being over 60 and having nothing? Having your own child leave you with nothing? The whispers followed me everywhere now. Did you hear about Linda Williams? Her own son left her nothing. She must have been a terrible mother. Maybe she should have been nicer to the daughter-in-law. Each whisper was a knife, but I collected them all. I stored them up, along with my growing anger and my ironclad plan for justice. Behind the scenes, I was busy. I moved into the Maple Street house, a charming blue cottage with a wraparound porch and a garden that overlooked the lake. It was everything I had ever dreamed of, and my son had somehow known that. I restored it carefully, lovingly. I hired painters and gardeners. I bought beautiful furniture and filled it with light and warmth. I secured my finances, meeting with my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Janet Morrison, who had been recommended by the bank manager. "Your son was very thorough," she told me, reviewing the documents. "Every legal requirement has been met. The transfers were completed 2 years ago. There's no way for anyone to challenge this." I had her prepare additional documentation, just in case. I wanted everything crystal clear when the moment came. I readied myself for war, but I did it quietly, patiently, methodically. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing for total victory. The moment came at the annual Harvest Community Banquet, the largest social event of the season. Everyone would be there. Everyone who had whispered about me. Everyone who had watched my humiliation. Everyone who had written me off as a pathetic old woman who couldn't accept reality. She arrived like royalty, wearing a glittering silk dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her new diamond jewelry catching the light from the chandeliers. She chose the head table, naturally, surrounded by the most prominent people in town: the mayor, the bank president, the country club president, the pastor from the largest church. I sat at a small table near the back, wearing a simple black dress and my late husband's modest wedding ring. People nodded at me politely, but briefly, clearly uncomfortable with my presence. Throughout dinner, she regaled her table with stories of her good fortune, her voice carrying across the room. "The house is being completely renovated," she announced. "I'm putting in a new kitchen, a new master suite. It's amazing what you can do when you have the resources." Murmurs of admiration. "And I'm thinking of taking a cruise this winter, maybe to Europe. When you don't have other people to worry about, you can really live freely." Knowing chuckles. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. She stood up, tapping her wine glass with a silver knife, calling for attention from the entire banquet hall. 200 people turned to look at her. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I want to thank this community for all your support during my time of loss. Losing my husband was devastating, but I've been so blessed by what he left behind." Nods and murmurs of sympathy mixed with approval. My husband was a wise man. He knew exactly who deserved his legacy and who didn't. He left me everything. The house, all the investments, all the savings. He made sure I would never want for anything. She paused dramatically, her eyes scanning the room until they found me. Some people in this community have had trouble accepting his decision. Some people felt entitled to what was never theirs. His poor mother, for instance. Well, she has nothing now. Nothing but the charity of strangers and whatever pity people might spare. The room was dead silent now, everyone's eyes moving between her and me. But you know what? Sometimes life teaches us hard lessons. Sometimes we learn that we're not as important as we thought we were. Sometimes old women need to learn when it's time to step aside gracefully and stop embarrassing themselves. A few uncomfortable chuckles from her table. So, here's to moving forward. Here's to new beginnings. And here's to knowing your place in the world. She raised her glass high, and half the room reluctantly raised theirs. That's when I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. Every eye in the room turned to me. The clicking of my heels against the hardwood floor was the only sound in the entire banquet hall as I walked toward the front of the room. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. I placed it on the head table with a sound that echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. "Nothing?" My voice boomed across the hall, clear and strong and filled with righteous fury. "You say I have nothing?" The laughter died completely. "Let me educate you, sweetheart. And let me educate everyone in this room about what really happened here." I opened the folder with deliberate precision. "While you were busy tossing my clothes into the street like garbage, while you were humiliating me at my own son's funeral, while you were spreading lies about what kind of mother I was, my son was busy protecting the woman who raised him." Gasps began rippling through the crowd. "He left me the deed to a beautiful house on Maple Street, paid in full, no mortgage, no liens, mine free and clear." Her wine glass started trembling in her hand. "He left me $500,000 in a private account. Money he saved and invested over the past 2 years, when he started to see who you really were." Murmurs grew louder. People were leaning forward, straining to hear every word. "He left me dignity that you will never be able to touch, no matter how hard you try." Her face was going white. "But most importantly, he left me the truth. And the truth is this: he saw right through you. He saw your greed, your cruelty, your complete lack of love for anyone but yourself. He saw what you would do to his mother the minute he was gone." Her wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "That's not true! That's impossible! You're lying!" she screamed, her composure completely shattered. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the silent room. "Oh, but it is true. Every word. And here's the beautiful part. He predicted exactly how you would behave. He knew you would try to destroy me. He knew you would humiliate me publicly. He knew you would show this entire community your true colors." I straightened up, my voice growing stronger with every word. "And you did exactly what he said you would do. You revealed yourself to everyone here. You showed them the kind of person who throws an old woman's underwear in the dirt, the kind of person who bars a mother from her own son's funeral, the kind of person who mocks someone's poverty while wearing jewelry bought with their dead son's money. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Shame on her! Did she really do that? At the funeral? That's horrible. I wasn't finished. And one more thing, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. That house you've been living in? The house you've been renovating with my son's money? The house you threw me out of like I was garbage? I pulled out another document and held it high. I bought it back. Paid cash. Full asking price. The deed is in my name as of yesterday. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, who was sitting at table 12, stood up and nodded. It's true, he confirmed, his voice carrying across the stunned room. The sale was completed yesterday afternoon. The property legally belongs to Mrs. Linda Williams. The room exploded. Applause erupted from everywhere. People jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering. Good for you, Linda. She had it coming. About time someone put her in her place. But I held up my hand for silence, and somehow they all listened. Pack your bags, darling, I said, my voice sweet as honey but sharp as a razor. You have 30 days to vacate my property, and next time you try to destroy someone, you might want to make sure their son didn't love them enough to see you coming from a mile away. Her face crumpled. Her mother tried to drag her toward the exit, but not before everyone in the room saw the complete shame and humiliation painted across her features. As they stumbled toward the door, the applause followed them out. But I wasn't done. I turned to face the room full of people who had watched my humiliation, who had whispered about my fall, who had written me off as a pathetic old woman. To everyone in this room, I said, my voice carrying to every corner, let this be a lesson. The next time you see someone being humiliated, the next time you see someone being kicked when they're down, maybe, just maybe, you might consider standing up for what's right instead of just standing there watching. Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. But tonight isn't about holding grudges. Tonight is about justice. Tonight is about a son who loved his mother enough to protect her from beyond the grave. I held up my son's photo, the one I had carried through all those dark weeks. Michael Williams, raised by a mother who taught him right from wrong, who taught him to protect the people he loved, who taught him that character matters more than money, and love matters more than anything else in this world. My voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. He's not here to see this moment, but I know he's smiling somewhere, because justice has been served, because the truth has been told, because Linda Grace Williams, the woman who raised him, is still standing. The applause this time was thunderous. People were crying. Mrs. Patterson was sobbing into her napkin. Even the mayor was wiping his eyes. That night, I sat in my beautiful home on Maple Street, my home, sipping tea by the window that overlooked the lake. My son's photo smiled back at me from its place of honor on the mantelpiece. They tried to bury me, my darling boy, I whispered softly. They tried to make me disappear, to turn me into nothing, but they forgot something important. I raised my teacup in a toast to his memory. They forgot that I was a seed. And seeds don't die when you bury them. Seeds wait. Seeds prepare. And then, when the time is right. I smiled. The same smile I had given him every morning when I sent him off to school, every evening when he came home, every day of his life when he needed to know he was loved. Seeds rise. The next morning, my phone rang constantly. Neighbors calling to apologize. Church ladies wanting to invite me back to the circle with a leadership role. The mayor asking if I would consider joining the community planning committee. But the most important call came from Janet Morrison, my lawyer. Linda, she said, you might want to know, she's hired an attorney. She's trying to contest the will, claiming emotional distress and undue influence. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Let her try. My son documented everything. He was smarter than she ever gave him credit for. There's more, Janet continued. She's also being investigated for insurance fraud. Apparently, she filed some claims that weren't entirely accurate. I'm not surprised. And Linda? The story has gotten out. Channel 7 wants to interview you. They want to do a feature on family loyalty and justice prevailing. They're calling it The Mother Who Rose Again. I considered this. Part of me wanted to stay private, to enjoy my victory quietly. But then I thought about all the other women out there who might be facing the same kind of destruction. All the other mothers who might be watching their dignity stripped away by cruel people who think they can get away with it. Set up the interview, I said. But make sure they tell the whole story. Make sure they talk about what real family looks like. Make sure they understand that this isn't about money. It's about a son who loved his mother enough to protect her from beyond the grave. 3 weeks later, she moved out of my old house. I drove by on the day she left and watched as the movers loaded her belongings into a truck much smaller than the one she had used to throw me out. She saw me sitting in my car and walked over, her face a mask of defeat and barely controlled rage. "You think you've won," she said through my rolled-down window. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had tried so hard to destroy me, who had revealed her true nature to everyone who mattered. "Honey," I said gently, "I already won. I won the day I raised a son good enough to see through you. I won the day he loved me enough to protect me. I won every day I chose to be the kind of person worth protecting." I put the car in drive. The difference between you and me isn't money. It's character. And that's something you can't steal, no matter how hard you try. As I drove away, I saw her in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the driveway of the house she had thought she owned, watching the life she had tried to steal disappear forever. That evening, I sat in my garden with my tea and my son's photo, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. "Linda Grace Williams," I said to my reflection in the window. "Remember the name. The mother they tried to erase, the woman they couldn't break, the seed that rose." I smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a smile of pure contentment. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another story of justice served and love prevailing. And tomorrow, I'll tell you about the time my family tried to keep me away from Christmas dinner, and how I turned their plan upside down in front of everyone, teaching them that Linda Grace Williams always gets the last laugh.